Hi everyone, this is Dee Dee sharing another story with you from the internet. This one's from Mysteries of Canada. It's a collection of stories that were featured in a British Columbia magazine in the 1920s. Back in 1925, an Irish expat named John Walter Burns, J.W. Burns, became both the Indian agent and the school teacher at the Chehalis Reserve. Burns quickly earned the respect of the local natives and became fast friends with Frank Dan, a prominent Chehalis medicine man. In those days, the Chehalis people were typically reluctant to share their stories with white men for fear of ridicule. Since J.W. Burns had demonstrated an open-mindedness towards their myths and legends, however, they eventually opened up to him and made him privy to some of their most carefully guarded secrets. Among the most intriguing of these were tales of wild, hairy giants who, the Chehalis maintained, had inhabited the forest surrounding the reserve since time immemorial. In 1929, Burns compiled some of these stories and published them in an article in the April 1st, 1929 issue of the Canadian magazine Maclean's under the headline, Introducing British Columbia's Hairy Giants, a collection of strange tales about British Columbia's wild men as told by those who say they've seen them. And the story goes like this. It's titled, The Wild Women of Hatzik, British Columbia. In around 1914, Charlie Victor had an encounter with a hairy wild giant while hunting in the mountains near the village of Hatzik, just east of Mission, British Columbia. On this excursion, Victor was accompanied by his dog. Upon hiking up to a plateau, his dog rushed over to a large cedar tree and began to growl and bark. Victor noticed that there was a large hole in the tree about 7 feet from the ground, and that his dog apparently wanted to enter it. Victor lifted his dog up and watched it scurry into the hole. Suddenly, a muffled cry issued from within the tree. Victor raised his rifle, thinking that his dog had encountered a bear. Sure enough, something large crawled out of the hole and fell to the ground. Instinctively, Victor took a shot at it, an action which he immediately regretted. For there at his feet sprawled a bleeding, naked, black-haired Caucasian boy of about 12 or 14 years of age. Horrified, Victor dropped his rifle and approached the boy to examine the extent of his injury. He saw that he'd shot the boy in the leg, but before he had a chance to dress the wound, the boy cried out as if appealing for help from the forest. From across the mountain, a long way off, Victor said, rolled a booming voice. Shortly thereafter, Victor heard the voice again. This time, it was a little closer. The boy screamed again, as if in reply. Although he was scared out of his wits, Victor's conscience would not allow him to abandon the boy he had wounded. He waited on the plateau, his dog whimpering fearfully at his feet, while the boy guided his mysterious sylvan savior to his location. Less than half an hour, said Victor, out of the depth of the forest came the strangest and wildest creature one could possibly see. The hairy creature, he continued, for that was what it was, walked toward me without the slightest fear. The wild person was a woman. Her face was almost dark black, and her long, straight hair fell to her waist. In height, she would be about 6 feet tall, but her chest and shoulders were well above the average in width. Victor told Graves that, although he had already met several wild women by this time, he had never seen anyone quite so savage in appearance as this woman. I'm sure that if that wild woman laid hands on me, she'd break every bone in my body. The creature glanced at the boy before rounding on Victor, her face contorted with rage. Then something truly remarkable happened. Using Statmasets, the tongue of the Douglas First Nation, a branch of the Lillooet tribe whose members lived at the northern end of Harrison Lake, the wild woman snarled, "You have shot my friend." Victor, who knew the Douglas language, replied that he had mistaken the boy for a bear and that he was sorry. Ignoring him, the wild woman proceeded to dance around the boy by chanting the word Yahoo in a loud voice. Every time she voiced it, a similar reply came from the mountain. Soon the wild woman was joined by another wild creature just like her, who carried a 6-foot-long cord, which Victor suspected was either a snake or the intestine of some animal. But whatever it was, he said, she constantly struck the ground with it. At the end of this strange ceremony, the second wild woman effortlessly picked up the boy with one hairy hand. That accomplished, she turned towards Charlie Victor, pointed the cord at him, and said, "Siwash, you will never kill another bear." With that, the wild woman and the boy disappeared into the woods. With tears in his eyes, Charlie Victor admitted to J.W. Burns that, indeed, he had not shot a bear nor any other animal since that fateful day. Well, that was the story. I hope you all enjoyed it, and thanks for listening.